All right. Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Just one housekeeping note. We're going to be doing a little strange truncation of learning for the next few days. We're going to, of course, learn tonight Daf Chav Gimel. Normally, we learn a blot and a half. This is equivalent to 2 blot, what we're learning tonight. It's a massive amount of text, as you can see. Both amudim are huge. On Shabbos, Emir Hashem, we're going to learn Makkos, Daf Chav Dalet, and Shavuos, Daf Beis. So bring both Maseches, please. And on Sunday, we'll learn Shavuos, Daf Gimel, and have a siyum on Makkos. So Sunday night, Makkos, siyum, $20, please Venmo or Zelle. Don't pay extra, just please pay 20. I don't want any like shiurs and choshemish, but I just want to give all the money to Yitz Brandis and not really think about it. So please pay the right amount. Makes it easier. And I don't know what he's cooking up, but it's usually pretty good. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Just give him the keys to the car. Yeah.
It'll be flashings.
Doesn't matter. I guess we should do it before so the food's fresher. Huh? Yeah, we're done, and the food's fresher, and we're probably hungry. We can skip dinner at home that night. All right, top of Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, starting at an open Gemara based off of a fascinating Mishnah. The last din of this Mishnah that we learn is that is that if there is a sense of bizayon, then a person would become pater from Makkos. And the examples listed at the end of the Mishnah, that if a person defecated or urinated prior to receiving Makkos, we'll have to see. That's a machlokas tanaim, if it was prior to, right, or after the first of the Makkos, they then become pater. So that's what the Gemara said, and the Mishnah said a machlokas tanaim about this. Rabbi Yehuda had said that only by a male is defecation the standard. By a woman, it's even urine. That would be sufficient. To women and men have different standards of what's considered v'nikla achicha leinecha. The implication from the Gemara, from the Mishnah, is that if a man urinates in his own clothing, it's not a bizayon. It's an odd implication. But for a woman, she's so makbid on her, how a woman carries herself in a dignified way that even urine patters you. So it's fascinating. I don't know if there's almost like psychological lines that are being discussed here. That, at least according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanakama doesn't distinguish. It just says niskalke b'rei b'mayim pater. The Mishnah says, "My time, but what's the reason why we have a ptur?" So the Gemara says, "Mishum nikla," because there is a bizayon. And if you see the pasuk on the sides, the pasuk says that there's makiraba and menikla achicha leinecha, that there is in fact some type of bizayon. We're now going to learn a number of statements from Rav Sheshes. The Gemara says, "Amar Rav Sheshes, Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, minayin l'ratzua sheishel egel." How do we know that the strap that's used to give the malkos is made from an egel, from a calf? One pasuk says that you get 40 lashes. And we see the next pasuk is speaking about a shore, and therefore, because of the smichus parshios, we know that the leather has to be made out of that. That also means that if you make it out of another type of leather or fake leather, then that's not malkos. You got to do it the way that the Torah prescribes. It's not optional. We don't get to choose these things. That's what the din is. Fine. Next din of Rav Sheshes, unrelated to this. Rav Sheshes, and we've seen this Gemara before in Yevamos. Says the Gemara, Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, minayin li Yevama, shenafla lifnei mukashchen, she'ein chos minosna. Let's say that Rachel is married to Ruvain. They have no children. Ruvain dies, and then she falls to Shimon. But Shimon is a mukashchen. The guy is covered head to toes in boils, and she's like, I'm really not interested in this mitzvah of Yibum. So is she allowed to voice her own opinion, or does she just go through the motions and decide, but how does it work? So says the Gemara, Ein chos minosa. We do not quiet her. She's allowed to raise her concerns. Why? How do we know this? So that's just an interesting play on words. It's the brothers and it's chasim. So there's like you got to jump off it's a creative drasha. It's not like so clear as to how it's related. Okay, fine. That's what the Gemara says. Next thing about Rav Sheshes, we'll have a few more after this, 2 more after this. Rav Sheshes, Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Kol mevazeh hamoadim. Anyone who is mevazeh the moadim, ki'ilu oved avodah zara. So Rashi on the 3rd line says es hamoados, a little bit of an interesting play with the grammar there, moados versus moadim. Rashi says chulo shel moed. Now this is something that comes up every year. We, as an Orthodox community, are poorly educated on the halachos of chol hamoed. We are dealing with potentially Isuri Deoraisa according to some, and certainly Isuri Derabanan according to others. Not everything is mutter during Chol HaMoed. It requires a study of the halachos of Chol HaMoed to know the halachos well. Rabbi Zucker from the Kollel put out a beautiful sefer that was published by Art Scroll called Chol HaMoed, and it details a lot of obviously all the principles, but a lot of halachic applications. Can you polish your shoes? Can you, whole different set of things, right? So I asked Rabbi Robinson the Shiloh this year during Chol HaMoed. I said, I have shoes that I would like to polish for Yontif. He said, mutter. I said, good. And I wouldn't do it, I would go do it. I said, while I'm at the store, can I have them put in taps? He said, no, it's not for Yontif. Because the nafkamina of you having taps for 2 days is zero. I'm like, you don't know how OCD I am. He's like, stop. It's totally usher, and you can't do the taps until afterwards. So there are halachos. So if we are going to be mevazeh the moed, then we're not going to treat them properly. So then, juxtaposition, right? Knowing that these two things were put next to each other, and again, the wisdom of how to extract from the psukim what was meant to be learned is beyond the scope of any of our skills and knowledge, for sure. But that is another din of his. Next. Anyone who speaks lashon hara, which is saying something truthful but mean about another person. Anyone who listens to lashon hara, what are you supposed to do? Close your ears? Yeah, maybe, but if you heard it, then you have to push back and say, I'm sorry, I'm not makabel. That's not correct. I don't believe you. Tzaddik. And anyone who gives false testimony, ra'ui, says the Gemara, right la shlicha leklavim, and these people should be thrown to the dogs. Dechsiv lakelav tashlichuno so b'samichlei lo sisa shem hashav. Juxtaposition yet again. These things are learned again from their juxtaposition, and throw them to the dogs, and that's shem hashav. And kari beinami lo sasi. Lo sasi is don't cause a false statement to be said, not just don't say a false statement, but even to cause one. B'shtei ritzuos Tana, we have a brisa shel chamor. We had said this is such a musar. Oh, this is our musar for today. If you didn't learn musar today, this is our musar for today. The Gemara says, why does the whip of Makkos need to have the leather of a donkey in it? Like a Galilean said by Reb Chizda. The shore knows who his owner is. The donkey knows who his master is. Yisrael lo yada. So therefore, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yava mishamakir evos be'alav. Let the donkey, who knows who his master is, who knows where he gets his food from, so Kadosh Baruch Hu sneaks in, subtle like a sledgehammer. He puts in a non-kosher animal, and he takes the leather and he weaves it into the whip. Because when we are not on our game, which is pretty often, when we are not on our game, we are lower than the donkey, because at least the donkey knows where the food comes from. He knows who his master is. Okay, Yada Tefach, we were talking about the shiur of the handle, length and girth of the handle. Amar Abai Shma Mina Kol Chad B'Chad Lefum Gabei Avdin Anle. We had said in our Mishnah uniquely that the strike of the makkah was 2/3 on the back and 1/3 wrapping around to the front. But I wear a small suit jacket. Other people wear bigger suit jackets. So if you have to get, 2/3, 1/3 for someone of my size, it's going to be, a shorter wrap. What about someone who's a little bit bigger? It's going to be bigger. What about someone who's very big? Could be double the size. So the Gemara is medayik. It must be that Bezdin had like you go to the wall and there's like, oh, this is a small, this is a medium, this is a large, this is an extra large, right? They have all the sizes. Says the Gemara, can't be. Okay, wait, it can't be that they'd make so many. How often were they giving out Makkos? Wasn't every day. There was some type of adjustment that was there. Sometimes they could make it loosen the knot, and sometimes they could tighten the knot. They had some type of system, I guess. Yeah, it was adjustable, and they were able to say, "Oh, so what's the amount of space from your back? 2/3 of the back plus 1/3 of the front." The Gemara, interestingly, doesn't measure the width of the body. Like, what if someone has a very wide side of their body? They're a big guy. So I don't know. It just says 2/3 on. I don't know exactly how that works. I presume it means that it has to wrap around to 1/3 of the front, factoring in the side of the body. I mean, our bodies are not made out of they're semicircular, so like it's kind of hard to measure, but that's what it seems to be. Malkin also. How do we know that it's supposed to be 2/3 and 1/3? Amar of Kahana da Amar Krabi Pilu Hashofet V'Hikau Lefanav Kedei Rishaso B'Mispar. Tough drasha. Look at this. Risha Achas Milefanav Kedei Risha Shtei Rishayos Me'achora. Where do we get this? One in the front and two in the back. So that's look back in the pasuk. V'Hikahu Lefanav Kedei Rishaso B'Mispar. So the drasha is with the word B'Mispar. Lefanav V'Hikahu Lefanav once, and Kedei Rishaso. The mispar must be double because mispar numbers are only helpful when you have two numbers. They're sequential, then we know exactly what you're measuring. So that's how the Rishonim deal with exactly how to extrapolate this type of a drasha. Ein malkano sobechule, says the Gemara. Amar Rav Chiza, Amar Rav Yochanan. Minayin leritzu hashim muchpelas. How do we know that the strap needs to be folded on itself to double? That was the din that we saw in the Mishnah yesterday in the bottom of Chav Beis Mitbeis. Shneimar v'hipilu. And what's missing from the Gemara are the following words: V'hipilu, kari be v'hichpilu. So it's a drush as well. How did the Chachamim know to add the chaf? I have no idea, but that's what they did. V'hichpilu, that you should double it. How can you say that? We already learned what v'hipilu is. Remember yesterday we learned v'hipilu teaches us that the person has to be folded over. So we tie his hands onto a bar that's a little bit lower. So says the Gemara, in kain lichtov kra yatehu. If what you wanted to say was that it was if the only thing you wanted to learn from that was that he should be bent over when he's getting lashes on his back, the pasuk should have said yatehu. My hipilu shmami notarti, that you can learn out both things. You should learn out number one that bihichpilu, that the rope is going to be folded over and doubled, and you should also learn from there that the person himself needs to be folded over. Hamake biyado tanu rabbanan. The Brisa says machlokas tanoim as to who they hire to be the practitioner of the Makkos. So says the Gemara, ein ma'amidin chazonin ela chasire koach v'yisere mada. The people who need to do this have very little strength and tremendous amounts of knowledge. I picture someone like Rabbi Ephraim Friedman, who's like a simple frame. But my gosh, the brain is only Torah. Rav Chaim Kanievsky, he Pasha couldn't remember things that weren't Torah. He didn't value them, so he didn't remember them. What a discipline to tell your brain what to remember and what not to remember. Unbelievable.
Just didn't pay attention to what.
Right, because food wasn't important.
It's unbelievable.
How do you do that?
Unbelievable. You gotta eat because you have to eat, right?
Okay, but it's gashmi, so I don't value it.
You have to eat, so you have to eat. It's important what I eat. I eat what the rabbits and put in front.
Right.
But now it came time for a Rona. I have to get it right.
It's unbelievable.
Right? I can't eat.
So that's chasire koach v'isere mada. They knew everything, but they were weak. Maybe the Kadosh Baruch Hu was trying to be a merachim. However, Yehuda Omer, no, afilu chasire mada v'isere koach. Even if they weren't so sharp, but they were mamish, the world's strongest man. Amar Rava Kavase the Rabbi Yehuda Mistabra. It seems like the second opinion is true, that the practitioner, that the chazan who's going to do the Makkos would even be someone who is strong. Tichsiv lo Yosef pen Yosef, don't add, or I'm afraid you're going to add, meaning we're giving the guy instructions. The guy's obviously not so bright, so we're telling him what to do. If you're a Talmud Chacham, you think you have to tell Rav Chaim Kanievsky how many times to hit or how to. No, he knows everything already. So Elamai, when the pasuk says lo Yosef or pen Yosef, it must be talking about chasire mada, that they're not so smart. Says the Gemara of Rabbanan, no. Ein mizarz el mizuros. Who do we remind people to do things? Those are the people who care. This kind of reminds me of that line. If you want to get something done, give it to someone who's very busy, because they will get it done. That is a psychological profile. And like I remember saying to one of my kids, "Can you please take care of this?" They're like, "I don't have time." I'm like, what? You literally do nothing. Like nothing. I'm like, live a day in my shoes or the shoes of any adult in my family, and then come back and tell me that you don't have time. Chutzpah Neira. Oh my gosh. I felt like such a failure as a parent when that happened. Of course he did it. But it was by force. I'm expecting a karasatov. This took the whip out. And I'm not a strong person, but Well, yeah, I'm makbid. I'm makbid like the Tanakama. Tana, how does he hit? Kshehu magbia b'shtei yada. when he lifts up the whip, he lifts it up with two hands over his head. Uchshumake, he releases his hand. Make biyodo achas, ki hechi delesi midide, because it has to come from his hand, as opposed to two hands, or possibly it has to be all from it. Again, what does that mean? It has to all be from him. It's not such a simple thing. So that's what the Gemara says, that it needs to be two hands up, one hand down on the swing. Kore, there's a lot of readings that are done at this time. Tanu Rabbanan. Hagadol shebedayanan kore. The biggest dayan in the room, he is the one who reads the psukim. Hasheni Mone. The second person counts to make sure we don't lose count, because everything has to be mishtalish. Everything has to be, divisible by three. Vashlishi Omer Hikahu. And the third is the person who says hit. So this was a very organized process, and there were a lot of people around. There were at least 5 people in the room. There was the Baal Din who was getting the Makkos. There was the Koreh who was the biggest Dayan. There was the counter, and there was the person who said hit. So we have 5 people in the room right now. There's a lot going on here. Bisman shemake meruba, when there are a lot of malkos, then the koreh, the reader, who's the dayan hagadol, he's marich. He has to space out what he's reading over the length of all of the malkos. Bisman shemaka mu'etes, when he only can handle 3 or 6 or 9 on a smaller front, then mekater, then he's got to make all of it fit into that shorter space. He is timing his reading to be the same amount of time as the malkos that are transpiring. But our Mishnah said that he repeats. So I don't understand. You're saying he's supposed to read at the same amount of time that it takes to give out the Malkos. The problem is that the Mishnah says he has to repeat. So which one is it? So it says the Gemara, no stira, mitzvah latzamtzem. Your job is to be exacting and really try to figure out exactly what the cadence is. V'lo tzimtzem, then you try. It's not simple to do because you don't know how long things take. But assuming that you have a little bit of a cadence, then you can time your kriyas of the psukim that we saw in our Mishnah yesterday, to be the same amount of time as it would have been for the actual Malkos. Tanu Rabbanan, we're 2/3 of the way down. I hope everybody davened. I think everybody davened. Tanu Rabbanan, Maka Rabba. Let's look at the pasuk over here. The pasuk says, "Arba'im yakenu lo Yosif pen Yosif lakos alele makaraba." So makaraba, ainli ela makaraba. I only know that if I add a makaraba, if I add a lot of extra lashes beyond what he was chayav, that I'd have to go to galus. Makamu etes minayin. How do I know that if I only went over by a small number of malkos, 1, 2 malkos beyond what he was deserving, and he died, I'd be held accountable? Talmud Lomer lo Yosif. Imken ma Talmud Lomer makaraba. Why then do we have the language of makaraba? Limin al rishono shehein makaraba. This is teaching us that the Torah refers to any number of malkos that is your punishment as a makaraba. If you can only handle 6, makaraba, you're getting a very significant consequence. We said niskalkel. Let's see other shitas and the machlokes over here in regards to the ptur of a person who defecates or urinates, and therefore, or urinates, or maybe not, maybe just defecates, but all the machlokos over here in regards to the ptur of malkos. Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis teach us in a brisa, echad ha'ish ve'echad ha'isha berei. That's only man or woman. They become pater only through defecation. V'lo b'mayim. Urine is not sufficient to be considered a bizayon to be Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ha'ish berei ha'isha b'mayim. That by a man, by him, that's considered the standard of bizayon if it's to defecate. But by a woman, her bizayon is a lower bar, which is urine. V'chachamim omrim, echad ha'ish ve'echad ha'isha ben berei ben b'mayim. He says it doesn't matter. Same for everybody, men and women, and both. Even it can be more makil for the man. Certainly, that's obviously true by rape for a woman. I have a Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda. You're being so serious yourself. What did Rabbi Yehuda say above? Rabbi Yehuda said, "Ha'ish bereiv ve'ha'isha b'mayim." However, here we see Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, echad ha'ish ve'echad ha'ish bereiv. It's a stira. So says the Gemara. No, it's not a stira. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak shnehem shavim bereiv. He wasn't saying that a woman is not going to be ptura from Malkos for urine. She would be. What we are saying is that they are both certainly, obviously it's true. So I don't know why this is such a, the second brisa of Rabbi Yehuda is very odd. But the Gemara, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, wants to answer that. He's just saying that for sure they're both going to be by Ray, but she can even be Ptura by Maim. Amar Shmuel Kaftuhu. Let's say that a person was captured, Viratzmi Bezdin, and he runs away from Bezdin, then he is pater from Malkos. Meisvei. Kala, if there was a bizayon, where again, depending on how you define bizayon, bein berishona, bein b'shnia potrinoso. Whether or not you're in the beginning of the process or you've already started the process of Malkos, so the bizayon of either Ray or Maim would pater. However, let's say in the middle of the hitting Nifsika Ritzua, this is like what happens in like all of the American states that allow for, there's always something that goes wrong in the death penalty cases. It's made the news, it's barbaric, the machine broke, the medicine didn't work. So here we have something somewhat similar, although this is not a capital punishment. But the Gemara says, what if the ritzua broke? Remember that we said it was adjustable. So let's say you swung a little too hard, the knot came undone, and half of it goes flying across the room. So now you don't have the requisite tool to do malkos. It says the Gemara, it depends. Only bishnia are you potrinoso. Only if you've already gotten one hit, then you're pater. However, birishona in potrinoso. So, Amai, why do we make the distinction that if someone were to run away before he got his first malkos, why is he pater? But when the ritzua breaks, it's only after the first malkos have been given out. So says the Gemara, Amai lehabe kiratz. It should be like the person who ran away that you should be pater even before the malkos starts. It says the Gemara, hasam ratz. The running away is itself ratz. That's a shtickle bizayon as well. Hacha lo ratz. The difference is the running away. When a person runs away, people are pursuing him. It's embarrassing. You're kind of like, yeah, you're the picture on the poster of the most wanted. Like there's a bizayon on that. The Gemara equates that bizayon, the running away, as being powerful enough to pater. But when the ritzua breaks, that's not really any more of a bizayon than it was before, and therefore you're not pater until something happens. Tana Rabban and the Rab.
Not good, but everything in my mind is like Makkos, it's men, it's men, it's men, it's men. I know about women getting.
Yeah.
I
I also think that way generally, but also remember it said they tear her shirt.
Right, so I'm saying, but more than done by a woman. She says 5 rabbanim standing. She's getting exposed. Like that in itself should be like a reason to get a bigger, like a fewer amount of lashes. Like there's only
Go back to Sota.
I was gonna say.
But in Sota,
You're the expert.
right? In Sota, part of it is to maybe be
Right.
sure. Well,
Not exactly.
but no, but I'm saying that here.
While it may not be a Sota,
Right.
transgression, she's not a Boy Scout either.
Right.
Actually, it's-
But here you're not.
This-
forced to
We're
be-
trying to avoid it, but we let it happen.
But this is worse. This is worse than Sota. By Sota, we're not sure if she did anything.
Right.
Here, we know she did something.
Right.
The worlds are different. She's guilty as charged, unintentionally.
Because we want.
But that's a din in Chumash. Like that, the whole Sota case is a chiddush. It's not.
Urinating versus running, like the fact that they're sure getting ripped in front of 50 men that are all bit from body in and of itself.
100%. I wasn't thinking until you said that. I wasn't really thinking about the application of them tearing the shirt. What does that mean? Achu magala slibo. Like for a man, I would assume that mean like the t-shirts that the wrestlers tear. Like just gone. Like I don't know what's happening. Like just that they should access the flesh. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Right.
Even that,
I don't know.
When they talk about stoning, right? They said a woman is allowed to wear.
Correct.
In the bed because why? Because it's being misfired.
Right.
Whereas the man, he has to go more unclothed. So why isn't there like?
I don't know. Is that our Mishnah here that says the clothes are torn on the bottom?
Nails at the beginning.
Okay, the Begadov. It's the Mishnah.
Yeah.
previous.
Yeah, Facebook. Yeah.
Im nikru.
I
Yeah, it's hard.
don't know what they do to them, yeah,
Leave up, not leave up.
well,
The mice that it has to hit the skin. I mean, we haven't seen that in the Gemara, but I assume that's the nature of this aspect of
Maybe it goes back to the question, we should not.
maybe for an Isha not. Lo yodea. Okay, requires more research. Tana Rabbanan, imdu lechashe yilke kala. If we make an assessment that when they get lashes, then they will defecate or rei or mayim, potrinoso. How do you assess something like that? When I was in college,
Any of us.
and for sure our generation, yeah, we'd be done. Yeah. And I was in college, and it was like major in bio. We did a lot of dissections. We did a lot of things to live animals. Also, we didn't kill them. We did things with them. Every time you pick one up, they defecate. Every time, 10 times out of 10. It was unbelievable. So again, there's a fear factor here that's massive. So if we can project that they're gonna be incontinent, so then you're done. So the Gemara says, kala. If the projection is that only after they get their malkos, and then after they leave bezdin, that they're going to then have, they'll have rei or maim, then malkin oso. That's not enough. The bush has to be now. Malkin oso. Even if, and this is a chiddush, I didn't know this, if they urinated or defecated first, not after the first malkos, first of the malkos, but before then. Malkin also. Shnemar first v'hiko and then v'nikla. There has to be a hitting first. It's not like I thought from the Mishnah that if at any point there's rei or maim. That's pasha not true. It's instead that there first have to be some malkos, either projected rei or maim, or actual rei or maim after the first of the malkos, then you're done. That's what the Gemara says. V'lo shaloka kvar bebezdin. So the laka, not malkos, but the laka of vilaka, this should be shekala. Sheyikle. Mine says sheyikle, and I see on the side Maharsha says shenikla. Kala is the wrong word. I mean laka is the wrong word. Oh shekala, because it's from the pasuk. That's v'nikla achicha le'inecha. I didn't catch that. Okay. Kol chayve krisus shelaku. If you have someone who's chayv kares, and they happen to have gotten the punishment of malkos, niftaru yudei krisasam, then they no longer have a din kares. The malkos paturs the kares. Shneimar v'nikla achicha le'inecha, shelaka harehu ke'achicha. Once he has malkos, now he's your brother again. And that shows us that malkos paturs from krisos. Divrei Reb Chananya ben Gamliel. V'amar Reb Chananya ben Gamliel, ma'im ha'over avera achas notel nefesh aleha, that if a person were to do an avera, then his neshama would be taken. Obviously, it's not any malacha. We're only talking about krisos. Ha'ose mitzvah achas. You should also know that when you do one mitzvah, al achas kama v'kama shetinasin lo nafsho. You'll get your nefesh. Again, I don't know what it means to get your nefesh, but let's assume we understood that. It means that, and we've seen this before, that meruba midas midatova midara. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu always pays in spades for us doing mitzvah. So if you have to weigh, I'm about to do either a mitzvah or an avera, then it's not a level playing field, because the payout for a mitzvah is much greater than the payout for an avera. But that's what the Gemara says. Reb Shimon Omer, last line on the page, mimakomo hu lamad. We learn that from its own source. Let's see what he means. Shene'emar v'nichrasu hanefashos ha'osos. Kares for the souls that do this. Ve'omer, and the next pasuk says, Asher ya'aseh osam ha'adam v'chai bahem. What does this mean? Ha'kol ha'yoshev v'lo avar avera. If a person is sitting still, they're sheva al taseh, and they're not doing any avera, nos and lo schar ke'oseh mitzvah. Baruch Hashem. I could sit and do nothing for hours. That's amazing. Reb Shimon bar Rebbe Omer, harehu Omer rak chazak levilti echol hadam ki adam hu nefesh. Listen to this gorgeous drasha. Again, we're in a Mishnah right now. So what does the Mishnah say? Uma'im adam shenafsho shel adam katzim imenu. People are grossed out by drinking blood. It's not an appealing thing. Yet even there, haporish mimenu mekabel schar, that someone withholds from doing an isser that they're not appealed to, they get schar. Then what about gezel ve'arayos? Shenafsho shel adam yis'av lehen umechamadason. Haporish men alachas kama v'kama sheyizke. Listen to this. Sheyizke lo uledorosav uledoros dorosav at sof kol adoros. So if you're going to say that by a mitzvah, by a lav that's disgusting to you, you're grossed out by it, disgusting, I would never want to do it. If you get schar for the sheva al tasa by that avera, oh my gosh, could you imagine the schar for something that you want to do, something that you have a temptation for, and you overcome. It's ain't no comparison. It's a whole nother level of schar. And then probably one of the most famous parts of a Mishnah in all of Shas, from Makkos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu lezakos es Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was looking to give merit to the Jewish people. So what did he do? Therefore, there are so many mitzvos. Because Hashem was chafetz l'man tzidko for his own righteousness, yagdil Torah v'yadir, he therefore made the Torah great. So many halachos and tile halachos. You have dinei d'oraisa, you have dinei d'rabbanan, you have minhagim, you have drush, you have agarata. Look on the wall behind me, svarim ad b'lidai. How many of us have ever gone through the Medrash Daf Yomi? Nobody. Kimat velo, that's not a thing. I mean, it should be a thing. We should all know Medrash. Although I did hear a story about a gadol that a wife saw her husband learning Medrash and said, "What are you doing? Go get a Daf Gemara. What are you doing learning Medrash?" What? No.
Not his wife, but they would say to him,
It was a modern story. No, that's true. No. Because he was giving a drasha. That's true. That was something he said. No, it was like a modern story of like a Rebbitzin who was like, watching the kids while her husband was. He's like, if you're going to be learning, go learn the real stuff. Which is really strange because it's Tanaim and Amoraim, but it's very early. It was very early and it's real. It's Torah. I'm saying it's not. It's hard to understand. Yeah. Well, the art scroll medrash behind me is actually quite awesome. They did like they always do. Huh? It's fantastic. Yeah. But I mean, it's a full piece of the Svarim shelf. It's a lot of learning,
Statement of itself, that's what one to be built up to us, so we'll give us Torah mitzvahs.
Mm-hmm.
The next obvious thing to be, and for Torah mitzvahs, it gets scarred. It leaves that off. In other words, let's finish the statements. Would be, I don't want to give us a good, right? And how do we do that? I'm trying to give us Torah mitzvahs. So that statement should be, and we from Torah mitzvahs to get scarred. So,
but Stan, the schar is not the reason for the Torah mitzvah. That's a perk.
That's my point. The basic reason would be I want to do it for schar.
You might have thought you're saying Havim. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, stunning.
Right? That it tells you that's not why you're doing it. You're not doing it for schar.
That's correct. Yeah, we're a very schar va'onish generation. Like, if I do this, can I get my kids all the time? Like, if I go with you to Target, can I get some? I'm like, I'd actually prefer you not go with me to Target. So like, this is not a schar va'onish model. You clean your room, okay? Then schar va'onish. Should I make a checklist and all the things we do as parents? We are wiring our kids the wrong way. You do things that are good because they're good. That's beautiful. Great ha'ara. I didn't notice that. All right, says the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Chalukin alav chayverav shel Reb Chananya ben Gamliel. Reb Chananya ben Gamliel in our Mishnah had said that if you get Malkos, it clears your slate of the krisus. It says the Gemara. Amar Rav Ada bar Ava, Amre Bei Rav Taninan. We have this in a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Ein bein Shabbos liyom Kippurim ela shezez dono bidei shamayim. What? Oh, that's amazing.
Don't eat grasshoppers. Okay, that's not difficult.
Grasshoppers are kosher. Pick a different bug. Oh man, I thought we were like writing some real Torah right there. The Daf Yomi Chidushim by Stan Gertz. That was amazing. That's really funny. Once you said it, it clicked. I'm like, it's got to be emes. That's it. So says the Gemara, Ein bein Shabbos liyom Kippurim ela shezeh zedono b'dei shamayim v'zeh zedono b'hikares. By Yom Kippur and by Shabbos, not Yom Kippur that falls out on Shabbos, but just Yom Kippur on a weekday and Shabbos, they are different in that by the Zadon of Shabbos is kares. Okay, different halachos. V'imisa, and if you want to say, like Chananya ben Gamliel wanted to say in our Mishnah, that the Malkos clears the slate of kares, idi v'idi bidei adamhu, then really I could clean the slate of the kares just by getting Malkos, no problem. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omer Hamani, that must be Rav Yitzchaki. To Amar Malkos bechayve krisus leka. He says, guys, apples and oranges. There's never Malkos when it comes to the realms of krisus. Titania, Rabbi Yitzchak Omer Chai beKrisus bechlal hayu. We learned generally about the halachos of krisus v'lama yatzas kares be'achoso. We already knew the halachos of kares broadly. Why then was it mentioned specifically by a sister? We saw this Gemara recently. Yeah, we saw it in this Masechta. Laduno bekares v'lo b'malkos, to teach us that, sorry, you're getting kares and Malkos won't help you. Rabbi Yitzchak holds, not like our Mishnah, not like Hananya ben Gamliel, that Malkos never even intersects with the world of kares. Nothing to do. Rav Ashi Amar afilu tema rabbanon. No, I could even come up with an answer that it could work for everyone. Zeh ikar zdona bidei adam, v'zeh ikar zdona bidei shamayim. You can't really make a diuk from that Mishnah of the Ein Bains, which is from Megillah. It's really just teaching us that what the ikar punishment is, but you can't even make the diuk that you wanted to make before, so we're all good to go. Amar Rav Ada bar Ava, Amar Rav, halacha Rav Chananya ben Gamliel. Seems to be that we paskin like Rav Chananya ben Gamliel, Baruch Hashem, Rachmana litzlan, if a person knew that they were chayiv kares and then they got malkos, they'd be pater. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef, man salik le'ela ba'asav Amar, who went up to the heavens and told you that we paskin like Rav Chananya ben Gamliel. How do you know? How do you know that malkos removes kares when kares is not in this world? That's a great question. Although after over 2,000 blot, I can think of where this question could have been applied 1,000 times, because we hear things like this all the time. Moshe Allah Lamarom. You look like you have a question, no?
I think the difference is, in other words, the Chachamim say that you cannot do this or that on Shabbos. It's mutter, it's also, it's whatever. Here, literally, is the Kadosh Baruch Hu going to flip the switch? Is he not going to flip the switch? There's only one way to find that out, and that's going upstairs and finding out.
Yeah, but I'm just saying we've seen it in Shas. We've seen it in Shas before. Pamalia Shalmala, like we've seen like a lot of references to things that are outside of our world, and we don't ask this question.
It's one thing asking, because I need to know what to do when I get up tomorrow morning.
That's fair.
Do I put on my towels this way? Do I put it on that way? Right. This is already.
You're saying it's a definitive psak with something that you can't be definitive about.
To do with it.
Very good.
Do it. You.
Very good. Very good. So that's what the Gemara wants to know. How can you it's one thing that Rav Chananya ben Gamliel holds that way. How can you paskin like that? That's beautiful. Amar le'abaye, alahada amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. I could ask you the same thing about Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Shlosh dvar masu bezdin shalmat v'skimu bezdin shalmala al yadam. Man sadak le'ela v'asav amar. How do you know that the Pamalia Shalmala all of a sudden agreed with you, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi? That's not normal. Elakroi kadar shinan. Really, all that's happening is they're learning from psukim. No one's guessing. It's not that someone was salik le'ela, they Moshe Allah Lamar. That's not what we're talking about. We paskin from psukim. We don't paskin from. We have this as a principle that we don't listen to a baskal. We don't listen to them. We don't rely on them in regards to psak. If the halachic process indicates the halacha is X and a baskal says Y, we ignore the baskal. I can't imagine ignoring a baskal, but we in fact ignore a baskal. Let's take a look at this din of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Gufa, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Shlosha dvarim asu bezdin shalmata, v'skimu bezdin shalmala al yadam eluhein mikra megillah v'shelas shalom b'shem v'avas meiser. One is that we have a minhag to read a Megillah. This was something that they agreed to upstairs. Sheila Shalom B'Shem, that Boaz, as we'll soon see, would say Hashem Imachem, and you're using Hashem's name, Mutter. And Vavas Meiser, this very, very, very lengthy, I would say Rashi, but as we learned earlier, Rashi had passed away. This is the Rivan. And there was basically, we're talking about unique scenarios of Knas that apply by Meiser. So says the Gemara, let's go through all of them. Mikra Megillah, Dichsiv Kimu v'Kiblu HaYehudim. Kimu Lamala, Masha Kiblu Lamata. Obviously. Right. So again, just with that line of thinking of who went up there to find out, so we see over here that this was taka the case, that it's from a pasuk. Sheila Shalom Dechsiv Hine Boaz Ba Mi Beis Lechem Yomer Lakotzer Hashem Imachem V'Omer Hashem Imachal Gibor Chayil, and we see that he did it in two different ways. He said Hashem Imachem. He also used Hashem's name another time. My V'Omer. Why did we need both psukim? You already said Hashem Imachem. Why do I need the next pasuk of Hashem Imachal Gibor Chayil? Boaz hu David midaite. If you want to say that perhaps Boaz was just foaming at the mouth and he said Hashem's name, such a sophisticated person, but really min Hashemayim they were not masking. Tashma, the Omer Hashem Yimecha Gibor Hachayil, that the second pasuk tells us that it wasn't just Boaz going out on a limb on his own, but rather the Eibishter agreed as well, and Pamal Shamal they agreed as well. Havas Meiser Dechsiv Heviu as Kol Maaser El Beis HaOtzer B'Teref. Bevesiu v'chanunu nabezos amar Hashem tzavakos im lo eftach lachem sarabos hashmai v'arkosi lachem bracha ad b'litai. So this pasuk says, bring in all the meiser, we're going to put them in the storage houses, and there's going to be so much until people say, I've had enough. Asks the Gemara famously, my ad b'litai, what does this mean when we say ad b'litai? This is a Gemara in multiple places that we've seen throughout Shas. Says the Gemara, Amar Rami, Bar Rav, ad sheyivalu sifso sechem milomar dai, until people's lips will become withered by saying, enough, you've given us so much. The soapbox, I actually feel like our generation should be the generation that is saying this, because what we have is so wildly like a joke how much we have. Like I heard a story, I don't even know if it's true, but it doesn't matter, the point is still good, that by Rav Elchanan Wasserman, by one of his kids, they were doing some type of thing like an upsharing or something like that, like a young kid learning the alphabet. I think he gave a kid tzitzis, and they wanted him to have a little honey on his tongue, but they couldn't afford it. I buy honey for like 90 cents an ounce in Jewel. Like, yeah, you gotta. There's pashut nothing that we can't get, and we can't, and within 2 days on our front step, we don't even go anywhere. It's unbelievable, and I hold of this a lot, even though I'm not as good at it as my mouth is. That is a massive nakuda. The Hakaras HaTov piece, it changes so many other challenges of perspective, of gaiva. It waters all the other challenges down. It's really powerful. So one of my friends in yeshiva used to do this. He used to write down everything that he thought was a good thing from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Just jot it down. Amazon, okay, whatever. Maybe that's a taiva. I don't know, whatever. We can do. My point is that we are the generation that should be saying, "She'ivlu tzifso sechem milomar dai." We've gotten so much. Okay. What?
Say the word die.
No, die.
Yeah. Did you use your lips at all?
Ah,
What?
die.
It's about kasha.
Die.
It uses the mouth and the tongue. It did not use the lips at all.
Ad she'ivlu tzifso sechem milomar dai.
And there's a million answers, but
Doesn't matter. It's a gorgeous question. And please don't tell me any answers. I want to brew on it. That's great. Amar Rabbi Lazar, let's learn a little bit more. I'm not going to quite get to where I wanted to, but let's learn a little bit more. Amar Rabbi Lazar, B'gimel Makom Sophia Ruach HaKodesh. In 3 places, there was Ruach HaKodesh. Bebeis Dino Shel Shem, in the Beis Din of Shem. Ubebeis Dino Shel Shmuel Haramati. Ubebeis Dino Shel Shlomo. Bebeis Dino Shel Shem. This is not Shem like Shem ve'Ever, which was in the times of Yaakov. That's where Yaakov learned. This was later because this was talking about Yehuda and Tamar story. The Chsiv Hayakar Yehuda v'Yomer Tzad Kamimeni. Minna Yada. How did he know that she was right? Meaning she said, the child is yours. How did he know that? If she was acting like a Zona, perhaps she conceived from somebody else, Mechatesi, that it's his. It says the Gemara that Dilma kihechi da'azal ihu legaba, just like he had access to her as a Zona. So azalami inashacharina legaba. It must be yatzas baskal v'amra mimenu yatsu kavushin. That these are his children. That's what the Gemara says, and we'll question this in a moment. The Veizino shel Shmuel dechsiv. The pasuk says, it's long. Let me just read it. Hineni anu vi neged Hashem and neged Meshicho es shor milakachti. He's saying, I didn't take anything, saying about Shaul, v'chamor milakachti, I didn't take anything from you. V'esmi ashakti, who did I oppress? Umi ratzosi, umi yad milakachti, chofer v'alim enai, v'chule, all of these, v'lo ashaktanu, all of these different things, v'yomer ad Hashem v'ad mishicho, ki lo matzasem biyadi mu'uma, v'yomer eid. And he said, eid, that there's testimony. What do you mean v'yomer? V'yomru, they should respond me b'ilei. Rather, it must be that the Vayomer was singular. It was Yatzas Baskal V'amra Ani Eid B'davar Zeh. The Eibishter comes and says he's right. Taka didn't do anything wrong. So that's where we see Ruach HaKodesh in that bezin. And Bevezdino Shel Shlomo Dechsi Vayana Melech Vayomer Tenu Lo Esayel Hachai. Remember the story of the 2 women who birthed at the same time, and in the morning, one of the babies, when they woke up, one baby was dead and one baby was alive, and they brought the living baby to Shlomo, and they said, "Figure it out." So he said, "Let's take a knife and cut the baby in half." It says the Gemara, "Lo tmisu ki imo." Must be that she's the mother. Mina yada dilma iarume me arma. How do we know? Maybe the woman is just a good actress, and she's trying to say, "I'm good. I know it's my baby, but I'm going to act." The other person's like, "I know it's not my baby, but as long as I overreact, I'll be fine." So you got to put on some acting. Yotzes baskal v'amra hi imo. That's why it says hi imo. that's a Kodesh Baruch Hu talking, he emo, that the mother, it wasn't her talking. Kodesh Baruch Hu was that's Ruach HaKodesh. So Amar Rabba Mimai, perhaps none of this is in fact based on Ruach HaKodesh. How do you know it's Ruach HaKodesh? After all, Dilma Yehuda Kivein. Yehuda did the math. He's like, when did she and I cohabit? And the Chashiva Yarchev Yom, he factored in, he did the math for the months and the days. V'Yisram, and he figured it out. The Chazinan Machzikinan, the Lo Chazinan Lo Machzikinan. He knows he was with her. We don't know other people were with her. He has a stronger chazaka, so we trust that his cheshbon was correct. Shmuel Nami, Kulu Yisrael, Kari Luhu B'Lashon Yachid. The fact that it says Vayomer in the pasuk doesn't mean that it's actually talking about singular Kadosh Baruch Hu and it's Ruach HaKodesh. Perhaps it just came from the fact that the Jews are always called this way. D'chsiv Yisrael, no Shah B'Hashem. Yisrael in the singular, no Shah. It was saved, not Nashe'u. Done. Shlomo Nami, Midaha Kamarachamta, Baha. Lo kamarachamta. He was able to tell that he could feel it on her. He could tell that was the case. Ella says the Gemara that it must actually taka be that we have a tradition and not that it's necessarily Ruach HaKodesh. We'll stop right here at the 2 dots, 4 lines from the bottom. Wishing you all a beautiful night.